Storm clouds gather across the global skyline, and tonight on The Grind we navigate the perfect thunderhead. I'm Art Grindstone, your guide through the dark corners where data points become dread and rumor becomes headline. We open with what Wall Street traders now call apocalyptic signals, shocks that begin where you feel them first, the wallet. The U.S. yield curve has been upside down for 9 straight months, whispering recession like a vulture circling a still-breathing horse. The International Monetary Fund piles on, warning that world debt has breached 300% of global income, a credit card maxed out by empires and corner stores alike. Behind those numbers is the hush of a living room after bedtime, where parents juggle groceries against rent and pray the fridge and the job last until Friday. That hush breaks with a bipartisan report titled 2030, Unraveling: Why America's Collapse is Set in Motion. These aren't doomsday bloggers. They're retired budget directors and historians who usually write footnotes, not fire alarms. They identify 3 structural fractures: political paralysis so deep, Congress looks like an unplugged phone; social media disinformation that turns neighbors into snipers; and an antique legal code trying to police AI heists with rotary dial logic. Left unpatched, they predict those cracks will converge around the year 2030, Medicare insolvent, disaster spending devouring the Treasury, and states threatening divorce over who gets the last drop of federal relief. Zoom out, and the United Nations confirms the tremor. 110 active wars, the most since World War II, and civilian deaths double what they were in 2019. North Korea lobs another missile over the Japan Sea. Russia shelves its last nuclear treaty, and geopolitics starts to look like a fireworks factory in a lightning storm. Meanwhile, supply chains once hailed as silk now rip faster than cheap denim. Low rainfall chokes the Panama Canal. Red Sea drone strikes shove shipping insurance into war zone premiums. Global oil reserves sit at their thinnest in 18 years. Phoenix bakes through 31 consecutive days above 110 degrees, forcing airlines to offload passengers because hot air saps lift. Sorry, Grandma. Physics says, catch the next flight. Each headline alone is a spark. Together they look like a bonfire begging for wind. But tonight's descent doesn't end with money or missiles. Beneath Melbourne's sidewalks, engineers hunt for Australia's lost blueprints, service tunnels wide enough for army trucks, wiped from every public archive. In Adelaide, a playground slide drops into a methane-filled void nobody mapped. Blank spots invite speculation, and speculation loves a conspiracy. Slide deeper and you hit the forbidden fungus hypothesis, psilocybin as Stone Age Wi-Fi that rewired human language, medicine or menace depending on dosage and decade. Sailors counter with omens of their own. 6 colossal oarfish beached in Japan as Earth's electromagnetic drum skips a beat. Scientists shrug. Old salts stock life vests. Then the mindbenders turn mystical. Aleister Crowley's ritual technology resurfaces on TikTok as visualization hacks. In Labrador, hunters chase the antlered caribou man, punisher of greed. And in Silicon Valley, consultants sell white papers on Level 5 autonomy by 2043. Robots building robots in lights-out factories, while 800 million humans Google retrain. Overlay that with a leaked MJ-12 memo predicting a dominant non-terrestrial force in Q3 of 2030, a solar eclipse crossing Jerusalem 6 months prior, and prophets from Hopi mesas to Jakarta minarets find their calendars syncing like possessed metronomes. History's fuse is already lit. The only question is how long the wick runs, and whether we can snuff it before the powder. Tonight, we sift evidence from omen, science from scripture, and policy from panic. We'll crawl lost tunnels, decode forbidden fungi, track ghostly fish, and square up to doomsday documents, because steering into the skid is the only way to keep control. Buckle up, citizens of the grind. Your newsfeed won't hold this much voltage, and your fact checker just called in sick. Storm clouds gather across the global skyline. Tonight we open with what analysts now call apocalyptic signals, and it starts where most people feel it first: their wallets. According to the United States Federal Reserve, the yield curve, that is the gap between short-term and long-term treasury rates, has been upside down for more than 9 months, the longest inversion since 1980. In plain language, investors trust tomorrow less than today, a classic sign that a recession lurks. The International Monetary Fund adds fuel, warning that global debt has climbed past 300% of worldwide income, even before accounting for shadow loans that sit off the books. Prices at grocery stores keep rising faster than paychecks, and companies from big box chains to startups have begun trimming staff again. These statistics may seem abstract, yet they echo in every quiet living room where parents stretch paychecks until Friday night, and they form the financial drumbeat to the collapse narrative we explore next. That brings us to a new report making rounds under the fierce title 2030, Unraveling: Why America's Collapse is Set in Motion. It comes from a bipartisan group of former budget officials and historians who usually avoid headlines, which makes their tone downright chilling. They argue that 3 design flaws threaten the republic: paralyzing political gridlock, runaway social media disinformation, and an aging legal framework that cannot keep pace with cyber threats or climate shocks. By their estimate, absent reform, these weaknesses will converge around the year 2030, slashing growth, splintering states' cooperation, and draining federal funds away from basic services. One example: Medicare's trust fund could dry up by 2029, leaving elders in limbo. Another, extreme weather, already costing the country about $100 billion each year, could force repeated disaster spending that widens the deficit. The authors do not shout about doomsday. They crunch numbers and flag warning lights, which makes their conclusion harder to dismiss as mere fiction, and it sets the stage for the global picture ahead. Zooming out, the United Nations Security Council heard what one diplomat called a final warning last month. The Council's own data show more than 110 armed conflicts underway, the highest since the end of the Second World War. Private trackers, such as the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, confirm that civilian deaths have doubled since 2019, driven by wars in Ukraine, Sudan, and the Sahel. UN Chief Antonio Guterres told members that modern crises cascade, meaning a drought feeds hunger, hunger sparks migration, migration strains borders, and borders ignite violence. Even formerly quiet regions feel the tremors. Reports from The Guardian note that Central American gangs now fight for groundwater rights as rivers shrink. Add to this the return of nuclear talk, North Korea firing another missile over the Japan Sea, and Russia suspending parts of the New START treaty. And the risk matrix looks far more crowded than a decade ago, pulling us toward the next layer of systemic shocks. those shocks are no longer theoretical. Supply chains once hailed as marvels now resemble tightropes fraying in the wind. When low rainfall throttled the Panama Canal this August, shipping delays rippled from Asia to the East Coast, and spot freight rates jumped by 40% in just 3 weeks. Meanwhile, the Red Sea corridor faces drone strikes that pushed insurers to charge war zone premiums. Energy markets wobble too. The International Energy Agency says global oil inventories sit at their thinnest level in 18 years, leaving little cushion if yet another refinery explodes or a new sanction hits. Climate adds heat, literally. Phoenix logged 31 straight days above 110 degrees this summer, a record that forced airlines to cut passenger loads because hot air saps lift. Each incident may seem like a separate headline, yet together they reveal an interlocked system stretched to the snapping point, and that tension feeds the notion that we may be one spark away from a wider blaze, which leads to the most unsettling sentiment floating through think tank halls and late-night diners alike, the sense that history's fuse is already lit, and the only question is how long the wick runs. Retired generals speak on cable news about tripwires, a stray missile, a cyber attack on a stock exchange, a blackout blamed on the wrong actor. That could shove major powers into open conflict almost overnight. Economists add that markets move at the speed of a keystroke. Panic can erase trillions before breakfast, leaving policymakers scrambling to catch a ghost. Yet, amid the dread, some analysts urge perspective. Humanity has sidestepped catastrophe before. Cuban Missile Crisis, Y2K, the Great Recession. And each escape came from sober talk, creative policy, and citizens demanding better. Whether we repeat that pattern hinges on how seriously we heed today's alarms. The signals are blinking bright red, but the road is still ours to steer, and steering it we must, because the next stories dig even deeper into the dangers below our feet and beneath our waves. After that, we'll surface hidden dangers lurking beneath the ground and sea. Subsurface whispers shape tomorrow's headlines. From global alarms to hidden threats beneath us, now we explore subterranean and deep dangers, beginning under the dusty streets of Melbourne. In 1974, city engineers mapped a grid of service tunnels meant only for power cables and storm drains. Fast forward to today, and those blueprints have vanished from every public archive. A mystery the Sydney Morning Herald calls Australia's Lost Blueprints. Retired construction foreman Bill Chen claims he once walked passageways roomy enough for army trucks, yet official drawings show nothing wider than a bicycle lane. Urban explorers armed with laser range finders have posted footage of multi-level shafts descending 30 meters, complete with blast doors and graffiti dated 1991. Why the silence? One rumor says the tunnels form an emergency escape for Parliament during crises. Another ties them to Cold War missile storage. City Hall insists the plans were just misfiled. But archivists note that fire, flood, and even simple mold cannot erase every carbon copy. Until the maps reappear, the ground below remains a blank spot, and blank spots invite speculation that reaches far beyond municipal plumbing. Speculation thrives because buried networks often outlast the governments that build them. Researchers at Deakin University point out that Melbourne sits over a labyrinth dug since the gold rush, now laced with modern fiber optics and steam lines. Lose track of one segment, and you risk sinkholes or toxic gas leaks popping like corks. Similar lapses already haunt Sydney, where abandoned rail tunnels filled with methane forced an emergency evacuation of Darling Harbour in 2019. In Adelaide, a 2-year-old sprained her ankle when a playground slide dropped into a void that no surveyor had charted. Each mishap renews calls for an open registry of subterranean structures, yet the registry never materializes, perhaps because secrecy pays. Utility firms avoid liability, defense agencies maintain hush-hush routes, and property developers sidestep costly soil tests. As a result, Australian taxpayers live atop a literal maze whose missing paperwork could trap rescue teams or hide less innocent cargo. That uneasy layer beneath our feet sets the mood for dangers born below ground, but blossoming within the mind. Enter the so-called forbidden fungus hypothesis, a theory that hallucinogenic mushrooms nudged early humans toward complex language and art. Ethnobotanist Dr. Selena Ortiz, speaking on the ABC program Catalyst, argues that small doses of psilocybin sharpened pattern recognition, making our ancestors better hunters and storytellers. Recent MRI scans at Monash University back her claim, revealing that psilocybin routes neural traffic through seldom-used corridors, linking sight, sound, and memory in vivid tapestries. Critics counter that fossils, not fungi, drove brain growth, yet even skeptics admit mushrooms can reboot entrenched thinking. That duality, medicine or menace, now confronts lawmakers worldwide. Oregon began supervised therapy sessions in 2023, reporting success against stubborn depression. Yet in Queensland last month, 3 hikers dosed off trail, wandered into a restricted mine shaft, and sparked a 2-day search costing $80,000. The line between enlightenment and peril blurs when a substance rewires fear and wonder inside the same skull. This mental frontier prepares us for creatures and cosmic hums that might rewrite fear itself. Sailors swear that when the sea births a monster, the land soon trembles. Their omen is the oarfish, a silvery ribbon longer than a school bus that usually drifts in abyssal darkness. Yet in June, Japanese beachgoers recorded 6 of these giants washed ashore in 10 days, triple the usual annual count. Folklore brands them doomsday oarfish, foretellers of earthquakes. Seismologist Dr. Kenji Ueda remains cautious, noting no direct link, but admits nature often sends complex precursors before a major shift. Alongside fishy portents, researchers track the Schumann resonance, Earth's global lightning-born heartbeat that echoes between the crust and the ionosphere. Sensors from Finland to Bolivia logged an unprecedented frequency dip on the very days those oarfish breached. Some physicists believe shifts in this resonance can precede volcanic eruptions or geomagnetic storms that fry satellites. Others dismiss it as random static. What is clear is that multiple unrelated systems, deep ocean life, atmospheric electricity, and tectonic plates, flashed anomalies together, and patterns and chaos spark new caution, even among hardened skeptics. Caution grows because every layer we probe, from subway to seafloor to stratosphere, reveals blind spots larger than the ones we just filled. Secret tunnels suggest lost oversight. Psychedelic spores challenge our mental maps, and spectral fish hint that Earth itself hums warnings we barely hear. Each story on its own is intriguing. Combined, they warn that threats need not stand on a battlefield to alter history. They can lurk under playgrounds, inside neural synapses, or in resonance waves circling the globe 8 times a second. The task now is not to surrender to dread, but to sharpen curiosity, demand transparency, and keep science and storytelling intertwined so that hidden hazards become visible before they explode. Our journey tonight continues to peel back veils, and in that spirit, we leave the underground and the abyss to confront realms where physics meets folklore. Up next, we turn to the fringes of mind and myth. Curiosity dances where fact meets the forbidden, shifting from hidden dangers to the frontiers of consciousness and legend. Here's our third news segment. We begin with a man whose very name still tingles like static across occult circles. Aleister Crowley, the self-styled Great Beast. Born in 1875, Crowley wrote dense grimoires, climbed Himalayan peaks, and claimed to channel a being called Aiwass, who dictated the Book of the Law. That text, with its decree, "Do what thou wilt," became a rebel banner for artists from Led Zeppelin to Jay-Z. Yet, scholars at Cambridge University now argue that Crowley's deeper legacy lies not in pop culture, but in ritual technology. He codified breath control, symbolic gesture, and focused imagination into a repeatable practice, what modern self-help gurus might call visualization hacks. Even portions of today's chaos magic stem from his instruction to treat belief as a tool, not a prison. Critics brand him a sham mystic, or worse, pointing out his drug binges and colonial arrogance. Still, his notebooks reveal a man testing consciousness the way an engineer tests circuits, and that experimental fire still burns in hidden basements from New Orleans to Nairobi. Crowley's unending shadow clears a path for the next entity, straddling superstition and modern inquiry. That entity is the Caribou Man of Labrador, a towering figure said to roam windswept muskeg near the Innu community of Shashachu. Elders describe antlered tracks that appear after first frost and humming cries rising on moonlit nights. The earliest written mention surfaced in 1934 when a Hudson's Bay trapper reported a stag that walked like a man. Fast forward to last winter, and a pair of snowmobile tourists produced thermal images showing a bipedal shape over 2 meters high, trailing a herd of caribou at dusk. Biologists at Memorial University remain skeptical, suggesting misidentification of a frost-bitten moose. Yet local hunters counter that moose avoid open barrens in deep snow, while sightings cluster precisely in those flats. Folklorist Marie Ashini notes that the legend carries ethical weight. Caribou Man punishes greed, tipping sleds of hunters who take more meat than they need. Whether spirit or species, the figure now draws cryptid chasers equipped with drones and DNA swabs, adding tension to a region already wrestling with mining claims and cultural revival. Fresh tracks keep appearing, leading us deeper into the blur where storytelling and science wrestle for footing. Blurred lines invite renewed questions about how humans map unknowns. Sociologists find that encounters with the uncanny, be they Crowley's rituals or Labrador's antlered shadow, often surge during eras of rapid change. People facing automated job loss or climate-driven relocation seek anchors in myth, which in turn evolves. TikTok now hosts tutorials on summoning one's higher guardian using sigils, a design Crowley popularized. Likewise, a viral clip from Nunatsiavut shows teenagers drumming in a clearing, hoping to glimpse Caribou Man and ask him to protect the herds. These digital echoes repackage ancient lore for mass consumption, yet they may also dilute context. Elders warn that cherry-picking rights without respect can backfire, much like tampering with a wild electrical grid. The conversation turns again to power, specifically the kind humming through data centers awaiting the final handoff to machines. Power is the core of the third frontier tonight, the countdown to total artificial intelligence automation by the year 2043. A white paper from the McKinsey Global Institute, released last month, sketches a 3-year cliff beginning 2040. That's when self-improving algorithms are projected to reach what engineers call Level 5 autonomy across finance, logistics, and design, meaning no human sign-off required. Firms that fail to adopt within 36 months risk collapse, much as typewriter companies vanished after personal computers. The numbers stagger. Up to 800 million jobs could shift or disappear worldwide, echoing warnings from the International Labor Organization. Enthusiasts argue new roles will sprout: robot ethicist, synthetic memory curator, emotion interface architect. Yet Harvard economist Dr. Leen Patel cautions that retraining on this scale demands an education revolution larger than the GI Bill. Meanwhile, venture capital pours into lights-out factories where robots build other robots in darkness to save energy. Opponents fear a feedback loop where the richest firms own the most data, thus the most powerful AI, deepening inequality faster than any tax law can balance. 3 years may feel distant, but clock hands spin quick when software writes the next version of itself before breakfast. So we stand at a strange crossroad, one path paved by a long-dead occultist urging personal will, another shadowed by a horned guardian reminding us of ecological restraint, and a third lit by silicon minds promising or threatening to take the wheel. The connective tissue is choice. Crowley insisted each soul must define its law. Caribou Man warns of consequences when law skews toward greed. Automation demands societies choose how value, dignity, and leisure distribute once labor decouples from survival. Ignore any piece, and the puzzle snaps apart. Listen to all three, and perhaps we script a future where magic, myth, and machine coexist without swallowing one another. The clock ticks, the snow drifts, and somewhere deep in server farms and spruce forests alike, unseen eyes watch to see which story we live out. Then, Art Grindstone leads our deep investigation into predictions for Earth in 2030. When whispers align, myths feel alarmingly real. Now, Art Grindstone kicks off our deep investigation into Earth 2030 predictions, a storyline stitched from leaked files, dusty scriptures, and celestial calendars that together paint the next 7 years as humanity's final act. The most electrifying origin spark is a bundle of yellowed pages labeled Majestic 12 Briefing, June 1983, better known as the MJ12 memo. Self-proclaimed insiders insist the packet surfaced from a retired Air Force clerk who copied it before shredders chewed the original. Inside, a single sentence fires imaginations. Projected arrival of dominant, non-terrestrial force, Q3, 2030. Although the Pentagon brands the papers an obvious hoax, the memo keeps reappearing in Freedom of Information lawsuits, each time with new marginalia traced in fountain pen blue. The persistence of this one phrase, dominant, non-terrestrial, Q3, fuels a countdown mentality across podcasts and prepper forums alike, setting the tone for how UFO chatter now merges with prophetic dread. That merger becomes clearer when we follow the trail from war rooms to pulpits, and from pulpits straight into the stars, so onward we go. Digging into the document itself, language analysts note military acronyms that match Cold War style, lending just enough authenticity to bait believers. It references Project Grudge, real, Project Aquarius, rumored, and a codename Frostline for unspecified hardware parked on the far side of the moon. The memo outlines 3 action tiers: contain public panic, negotiate resource swaps with the incoming force, and relocate continuity assets to hardened shelters by late 2029. Fear branches quickly from there. Popular author Dina Rourke claims on Coast to Coast Radio that the shelters secretly broke ground beneath 7 decommissioned missile silos in Wyoming and North Dakota. Skeptics counter that the concrete domes shown on satellite imagery are merely water tanks for ranchers. Yet even the debunkers concede that the memo's phrasing predates online hoax generators, and typo patterns match typewriters from the 1980s. The ambiguous credibility keeps the engine of speculation roaring, and that engine soon feeds on older, grander texts whose verses blaze like neon in this new context. Enter biblical prophecy, the amplifier no modern leak can escape. Evangelical preacher Pastor Marla Simmons drew 2 million viewers last month when she laid the MJ-12 timeline alongside passages from Revelation. She points to chapter 9, where locusts with faces of men descend after 5 months of darkness, and recasts the locusts as gray aliens arriving after a sun-obscuring dust veil triggered by volcanic winter. The book of Ezekiel adds more fuel with its vision of wheels within wheels, a phrase that UFO historians have long claimed describes spinning discs. Scholars at Baylor University caution that the original Hebrew likely paints a divine chariot, not a hovering saucer, yet the overlap in imagery proves too sticky for the public to ignore. On TikTok, the hashtag Wheels Within Wheels now hosts 500 million views, splicing drone footage of strange lights with choir music. When scripture and saucers collide, emotional voltage rises, and that voltage arcs next into heavenly mechanics, the precise dance of sun, moon, and shadow that frames 2030 as a cosmic alarm bell. Mark your almanacs. An annular solar eclipse will glide across North Africa, the Red Sea, and the Arabian Peninsula on Thursday, March 20 to 2030. Eclipse chasers rejoice. Doomsayers keep sharper notes. They highlight that the shadow passes over Jerusalem near local noon, coinciding with the 12th day of Nisan on the Hebrew lunar calendar, the eve of Passover in that year. Stir in numerology and the recipe thickens. 12th of Nisan aligns with the 12th letter Lamed, meaning authority, while Passover recalls plagues and deliverance. Conspiracy blogs claim the MJ-12 memo chose Q3 precisely because the eclipse acts as a visual trumpet blast 6 months ahead, giving governments time to unveil bunkers under cover of civil defense drills. Astronomers remain unimpressed, calling the eclipse one of 40 that decade. Yet they admit its track mirrors the path of the much-watched total eclipse of 2027. Twice in one generation, the sun will blink over the same sacred ground. Pattern hunters treat that blink like Morse code from the cosmos, urging us to read between rays for impending footsteps. With celestial and scriptural clocks ticking in sync, the stage seems ready for a climactic confrontation. Though history warns us, such countdowns often fizzle before the fatal hour. And that warning brings needed balance. Previous doomsday deadlines, Y2K 2012, the Blood Moon Tetrad, arrived with equal thunder yet left the world spinning. Economists remind us that fear sells survival gear, while psychologists note that apocalypse narratives offer strange comfort because they impose order on chaotic times. Still, even skeptics admit leak culture is different now. Whistleblowers can drop gigabytes in an instant, and artificial intelligence can fabricate or verify evidence faster than experts can meet on Zoom. Whether the MJ12 file is a clumsy forgery or a genuine redacted brief, its existence shapes behavior. Policy committees draft resilience plans, basement YouTubers buy Geiger counters, and families debate whether to vacation in 2029 or save for underground pods. Reality bends not just under truth, but under the mass of belief itself. As belief gathers around 2030, our task is to test each claim, trace each source, and keep our wits while others lose theirs. In Part 2, we'll dive deeper down the rabbit hole of prophecies and conspiracies. Prophecy echoes louder when multiple drums beat the same rhythm. Building on our initial overview, we now go deeper into diverse prophetic traditions, beginning in the mosques of Jakarta, Cairo, and London, where modern Islamic scholars debate the closeness of the last hour. In classical hadith, the hour unfolds after a whirlwind of minor and major signs: moral decay, desert architecture towering over mountains, and a smoky veil hugging earth. Sheikh Nabil Awan of the University of Medina argues that satellite photos of Dubai's mile-high Jeddah Tower mirror the barefoot Bedouins competing in tall buildings sign. Imam Aisha Qureshi counters that skyscrapers alone do not prove the clock is at zero. What matters is the sudden collapse of trust, symbolized by rising hate crimes and fractured global alliances. Both agree that 2029 carries weight because it marks 1450 lunar years since the Prophet's farewell sermon, an anniversary some commentators liken to a cosmic reset. Social media intensifies the urgency. Millions watch clips of red dust storms sweeping Riyadh and caption them "smoke of judgment." While believers argue details, the shared mood of imminence primes the world to find reinforcement in other canons. And that search steers us toward Europe's most famous seer. Michel de Nostradame, better known as Nostradamus, penned his quatrains in 1655, leaving puzzle lines that readers keep bending to match new events. One stanza speaks of fire from the sky over the great new city, the instant great flame. After 9/11, pundits claimed box cutters fulfilled the verse. Now, forecasters see a fresh fit for 2027, the year SpaceX aims to light its first Mars colony launch, essentially fire in the sky from a new city called Starbase. Critics at the Sorbonne say quatrains survive because they are vague enough to hug any headline, yet even they note a curious crosslink with the Malachy list, a 12th century roll naming popes until the end of days. According to the list, Peter the Roman should preside during a fiery tribulation, and some identify that title with Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, but Bishop of Rome nonetheless. Francis is in his late 80s. If he remains on the throne into 2027, expect more talk that the list nails the window. From cathedrals and quatrains, we shift to crystal shops and drum circles, where modern mystics recalibrate an older calendar for an even tighter deadline. Remember the Mayan calendar scare of 2012? New Age authors now claim we misread the gearwork. Anthropologist Dr. Lucia Morales explains that the original long count measures 13 baktuns, but colonial disruption likely skipped a 5-day correction that drifts the cycle forward just under 18 years. Add that slip, and the Great Shift lands in 2030, not 2012. Writer Kai Sun breezes through conferences with a streamlined pitch. Humanity enters a fourth density realm once Earth's magnetic poles settle into a new equilibrium. An event NASA models project could begin between 2028 and 2031. The concept attracts those weary of apocalyptic doom. Instead of extinction, they anticipate ascension. Cells vibrating faster, telepathy blooming, perhaps instant travel by thought. Retreat centers market ascension packages involving breathwork, microdosing, and 77-minute sound baths. Skeptics laugh but note that a spike in Schumann resonance data coincided with a global meditation on November 11, 2022, prompting fresh debates over mind-environment feedback loops. Whether cosmic upgrade or psychological placebo, the vision fuels optimism amid dread and sets the stage for indigenous voices who warned of Earth changes long before hashtags. The Hopi 9 Signs Prophecy, recorded by Elder White Feather, in 1958, rolls through history like a coded trail. The first signs, wagons on iron rails and cobwebs in the sky, match trains and telegraph wires. The eighth sign predicts seas turning black and killing living things. Many Hopi link that to the Deepwater Horizon spill. The ninth and final sign promises the appearance of a blue star kachina dancing in the plaza, removing its mask to reveal that the end is near. In spring 2021, amateur astronomers spotted a bright blue comet, C-2021-A1, which peaked near Christmas. It was hardly spectacular, but Hopi youth posted night vision videos calling it Sakwa So Hu, the blue star, drawing elders into urgent councils. Meteorologist John Gaskin notes comets appear blue due to carbon monoxide, yet rarity ups the shiver factor. Only 3 bright blue comets have shown since 1950. Now, Elder Oribe circles predict a larger, slower object arriving late 2029. Whether that turns out to be an Apollo-class asteroid or a trick of sky fog remains unknown. But the expectation locks eyes upward, even as climate fires rage below, weaving yet another strand into the growing 2029 tapestry. Across mosques, cathedrals, crystal lodges, and desert mesas, prophecies point between 2027 and 2030, like compass needles jittering around true north. Each tradition carries its own symbols, horns and swords, scrolls and stars, but all agree on a tight time frame loaded with consequence. Psychologists call this convergence the simultaneity effect. When multiple narratives fix on the same period, believers read cross-confirmation, sparking more conversions, more content, more commercial spin. Yet history reminds us that missed deadlines do not kill the stories. They mutate and march on. Whether we face a last-hour papal firestorm, planetary ascension, or Kachina dance, the critical skill is discernment. Separate poetic metaphor from practical warning so that we preserve both spirit and fact. Our next segment attempts exactly that, applying cold data to hot prophecy. Next, we'll connect these strands and reveal what may come true and what's likely fiction. Hard facts cut through swirling prophecies. In our final installment of this deep investigation, we bring together science and prophecy, weighing each against what monitoring stations, ice cores, and supercomputers now forecast for the next 7 years. Climate researchers agree on a simple line in the sand, a 1.5 degrees Celsius rise above pre-industrial warmth. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change calculates that humans have roughly 400 gigatons of carbon dioxide left in the global budget before that limit passes for good. At the current burn rate of 40 gigatons per year, the meter hits zero in early 2030. No scrolls, no visions, just arithmetic. Prophets speak of seas turning blood red. Satellites already photograph toxic algal blooms staining the Baltic each summer, hinting that metaphor can ride unmeasurable chemistry. This alignment of scripture and spreadsheet points us toward ice, the planet's early warning siren. So let us look north. Every September, Arctic sea ice shrinks, then regrows under winter darkness. Models from the National Snow and Ice Data Center show the minimum volume trending toward an ice-free summer as soon as 2029, perhaps even the earlier year, 2027, if emissions stay high. An ice-free ocean absorbs more sunlight, heating water that melts glaciers from below, another feedback loop. Apocalypse teachers call this the second trumpet. But cryonics of climate has no mystic horn, only physics. Darker water equals more heat. The consequence ripples through weather maps, dragging polar air south, fueling freak blizzards over Midwest cornfields and record droughts in Mediterranean olive groves. Insurance giants already price that risk. Munich Re estimates climate-linked losses could top $1.3 trillion by the decade's close. The tangible cost of melted ice leads directly to living systems clinging to coastlines and forests, so the next lens is biodiversity. Biologists compare Earth now to an airplane shedding rivets in flight. One or two snap, and we stay airborne. Lose too many, and the wing folds. A United Nations report warns that 1 million species face extinction within decades, yet the first cliff approaches well before 2030. Tropical coral reefs, nurseries for a quarter of marine life, bleach out permanently after back-to-back summers above 32 degrees Celsius. That threshold already struck the Indian Ocean in 2020, and projections show annual hits in the Caribbean by 2028. On land, wildfire seasons lengthen like elastic. The Australian bushfires of 2019 burned an area bigger than Greece, releasing smoke that circled the globe twice. Climate models predict that by 2029, such megafires could erupt every 2 years. Meanwhile, river floods grow fatter. The Mississippi may top levees near Baton Rouge 3 times per decade instead of once, chewing up cropland and freight rail alike. No ancient tablet predicted the precise coordinates of Baton Rouge, yet the Hopi 8th sign, seas turning black, mirrors oil-soaked floodwaters that now lap at refinery gates. Symbol and sensor coalesce, leading us to sift which warnings remain metaphor and which stand as date-stamped forecasts. Cross-examining prophecy against data shows some overlap, but more often divergence. The blue star Kachina of Hopi lore may find a stand-in if a bright comet lights late 2029 skies, yet comets neither melt ice sheets nor acidify oceans. Nostradamus' quatrains talk of fire from the sky, an image that could match record-breaking wildfire plumes. But the quatrains say nothing about methane's molecular bond angles or the jet stream's wobble. Islamic scholars discuss smoke enveloping cities. Satellite sensors confirm urban haze thickening as temperatures climb, though the cause is diesel exhaust, not divine seal. Where prophecy names a time frame that aligns with climate tipping points, common sense says heed the science, not because a verse demands it, but because thermodynamics and mass balance make it inevitable. That realization steers the conversation away from fatalism toward resilience, the domain where choice still rules outcome. So what now? For the United States, meeting its share of the carbon budget means cutting emissions nearly in half by 2028. A target that demands triple the current build-out rate of wind and solar farms, plus aggressive methane capture from shale wells. Coastal cities must raise seawalls or migrate neighborhoods inland. New York has already approved a $500 million berm around Lower Manhattan, and Miami eyes property tax surcharges to fund pumps. Globally, nations need to restore wetlands the size of France, to lock carbon and dampen floods, while creating wildlife corridors that let species move as climates shift. None of this guarantees paradise, yet each step pushes collapse odds back, buying time for cleaner tech and smarter farming. The takeaway is stark. Myth can inspire vigilance, but only measurable action bends the curve. 7 years is a blink in cosmic chronology, still enough for human will to tip the scale towards survival. Join us tomorrow when Art Grindstone brings more stories and insights on the grind. We've journeyed from inverted yield curves to inverted belief systems, from hidden passageways under Melbourne to hidden algorithms poised to run Wall Street in total darkness. We touched the pulse of Earth's ionosphere, eavesdropped on Arctic ice forecasting its own funeral, and watched prophecies collide like weather fronts over the decade ahead. If tonight's tour felt overwhelming, remember, overload is the first symptom of awakening. Prophets, physicists, and policy wonks all wave the same warning flag. Blink, and the horizon changes shape. The yield curve inversion may right itself, or it may precede a downturn sharper than a guillotine. The 2030 unraveling authors might see their worst case merge with the best case in some messy middle, and those lost blueprints beneath Australian streets could prove mundane storm drains, unless of course they don't. We confronted the forbidden fungus, that dual-natured spore promising neural renaissance or subterranean misadventure. We heard oarfish thrashing on foreign shores as Earth's electromagnetic drums skipped a beat. We traced Crowley's ritual tech into boardrooms where executives chant quarterly goals like sigils, and into basements where chaos magicians live-stream candlelit code. We weighed the Caribou Man's antlers against satellite imagery, balancing legend with LIDAR. We mapped a future where Level 5 autonomy might liberate humanity from drudgery, or shove half the workforce off a data cliff. And we dissected the MJ-12 countdown, tracking how one dubious document can rearrange global psychology faster than a central bank rate hike. Threading through every segment was a stubborn fact: choice still exists. Climate physics says we burn 40 gigatons of carbon a year. Politics decides whether that number falls or climbs. Supply chains groan. Engineers choose to reinforce or leave them brittle. AI accelerates. Regulators and ethicists decide how wide the guardrails stretch. Myths warn. Scientists measure. Citizens vote with wallets, ballots, and the attention spans of goldfish. So where does that leave us? Perhaps on the knife edge Nostradamus envisioned, fire from the sky, yet also within arm's reach of actions that dull the blade. Build seawalls or retreat inland. Swap coal for solar. Demand transparent tunnel registries. Teach kids critical thinking before deepfakes teach them despair. Apocalypse sells, but agency saves. Humanity has dodged extinction by spreadsheet before. The Cuban Missile Crisis, Y2K, the Great Recession. Each escape demanded sober talk, creative policy, and citizens who refused to hand destiny to algorithms or oracles. Here's your homework, fellow grinders. Audit your data diet. Filter the doom scroll, but don't bury the warnings. Practice radical skepticism. Question leaked memos and lab-grown prophets with equal rigor. Vote with intent. Politically, economically, spiritually. The future is written in every purchase and ballot. Stay curious. The tunnels you map, the oarfish you tag, the AI code you document could be the rivets that keep this skyship intact. If tonight's broadcast lit a spark, fan it, or stomp it. Just don't ignore it. The fuse is burning, but so is human ingenuity. Subscribe, rate, and review The Grind with Art Grindstone wherever you listen. Dive deeper at unexplained.co for source links and extended interviews. And join tomorrow when we crack open another vault of volatile truths. Stay sharp, stay skeptical, and as always, keep grinding.